epicenter of ideas that matter. The Left Coast Forum is bringing together voices that challenge, inspire, and illuminate, with keynote presentations from people like noted economist Richard Wolff, the man who breaks down capitalism in ways that make sense to working folk like you and me, and Dr. Cornel West will be there, the brilliant philosopher and activist who never stops fighting for justice and speaking truth to power and to the powerless, for that matter. So this isn't just another conference. This is where ideas get tested, where the conversations that shape our future begin. Multiple plenary sessions, dynamic speakers, real talk about the issues that impact our communities, and then some good food and a live band. Saturday, October 25th, LA Trade Tech, Left Coast Forum. The event is free and open to the public, but you must register at our KBLA1580.com website, where you can also peep the plenary topics. The future belongs to those who show up and engage. So don't just think about change, be part of the conversation that creates it. The Left Coast Forum is brought to you by the LA Progressive, the Empowerment Congress, Community Coalition, Partnership for Growth LA, Southwest Voter Registration Education Project, LA Care Health Plan, United Teachers Los Angeles, Black Progressive Action Coalition, St. John's Community Health, the National Lawyers Guild, the Weingart Foundation, and more. Space is limited, so if I were you, I'd register right now at KBLA1580.com. Your voice matters, your presence matters. We'll see you there.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. This is none other than Fat Meat Fridays. In the second hour, our very special guest will be none other than our regular contributor and the creator of the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show, Gina Towns. In this hour, I will introduce our guest in just a moment, but I do want to talk about some breaking news out of Oslo, Norway. Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Corina Machado has won the Nobel Peace Prize on Friday for her struggle to achieve a democratic transition in the South American nation, winning recognition as a woman, quote, who keeps the flame of democracy burning amid a growing darkness, unquote. The former opposition presidential candidate is a, quote, key unifying figure, quote, in the once deeply divided opposition to President Nicolas Maduro's government, said Jorgen Watne Fridnes, chair of the Norwegian Nobel Committee. Quote, in the past year, Ms. Machado has been forced to live in hiding, quote, Whitney Fridnes said. Quote, despite serious threats against her life, she has remained in the country, a choice that has inspired millions. When authoritarians seize power, it is crucial to recognize courageous defenders of freedom who rise and resist, quote. Now, there's something that we can learn from what is taking place in Venezuela, particularly the Venezuelan opposition. And we ought not, as Americans, ignore the fact that the Nobel Committee itself has spoken. And in its recognition of Ms. Mercado, they've stated essentially the criteria that they're looking for. That criteria being opposition leader, that criteria being keeping the flame of democracy burning amid a growing darkness, that key unifying figure, the Nobel Committee has suggested, has mattered even when she has been threatened with jail, just like Governor Gavin Newsom and Mayor Karen Bass. Just like Governor J.B. Pritzker in Illinois and Mayor Brandon Johnson. Now, in order to be nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize, a legislative body, and there are a number of ways that it can be, you can be nominated, a legislative body like, for example, the Los Angeles City Council or the Democratic state legislature in the state of California. You don't need both the House and the Senate, just one of the legislative bodies. The Illinois state legislature is run by an African American state representative by the name of Welch. Christopher Welch is the Speaker of our House. And the city council in the city of Chicago has more than enough African Americans and Latino members and supportive progressive whites who might see it to our advantage to recognize that Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass, Governor J.B. Pritzker, and Brandon Johnson are the equivalent of our resistance leaders, and there are many resistance leaders and marches taking place across the country. But if you really want to poke that bear in Washington, D.C., nominate the four of them for a Nobel Peace Prize. Just nominate them. Donald Trump wants a Nobel Peace Prize. But if these four opposition leaders are nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize, they might fit the exact same criteria that Miss Maria Corina Machado just achieved in her acknowledgement on this day that she has been awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. We must establish, in my opinion, a standard by which that prize is granted in this, what they call growing darkness that is overcoming our nation's politics. I wanted to opine on that just for a moment before I introduce our guest in this hour when we come forward, only because I want the citizens of Los Angeles to think about the possibility of what it would mean if we had alternative candidates in our resistance being nominated for the Nobel Prize, giving the Nobel Committee a choice between the growing darkness itself and the light being provided by Gavin Newsom, Karen Bass, J.B. Pritzker, and the mayor of the city of Chicago, Brandon Johnson. Four outstanding Americans who are holding the ground, keeping their finger in the dike for democracy. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. When we come forward on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show, our very special guest will be Diallo Brooks, KBLA Talk 1580. More when we come forward.
While you're stuck in traffic, we can at least bring you up to speed on the news of the day. You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. only on KBLA Talk 1580.
Hello, KBLA delegation. Tavis Smiley here. On Saturday, October 25th, LA Trade Tech becomes the epicenter of ideas that matter. The Left Coast Forum is bringing together voices that challenge, inspire, and illuminate with keynote presentations from people like noted economist Richard Wolff, the man who breaks down capitalism in ways that make sense to working folk like you and me, and Dr. Cornel West will be there, the brilliant philosopher and activist who never stops fighting for justice and speaking truth to power and to the powerless, for that matter. So this isn't just another conference. This is where ideas get tested, where the conversations that shape our future begin. Multiple plenary sessions, dynamic speakers, real talk about the issues that impact our communities, and then some good food and a live band. Saturday, October 25th, LA Trade Tech, Left Coast Forum. The event is free and open to the public, but you must register at our KBLA1580.com website, where you can also peep the plenary topics. The future belongs to those who show up and engage. So don't just think about change, be part of the conversation that creates it. The Left Coast Forum is brought to you by the LA Progressive, the Empowerment Congress, Community Coalition, Partnership for Growth LA, Southwest Voter Registration Education Project, LA Care Health Plan, United Teachers Los Angeles, Black Progressive Action Coalition, St. John's Community Health, the National Lawyers Guild, the Weingart Foundation, and more. Space is limited, so if I were you, I'd register right now at KBLA1580.com. Your voice matters, your presence matters. We'll see you there.
Eric was way behind on his taxes.
I owed a lot of money to the IRS, almost $15,000. I tried to make payments.
The IRS wasn't satisfied with Eric's efforts, so they came after him full force.
They're coming to put a lien and a hold on all my income, my home, my car. I was just overwhelmed at what to do.
Then Eric called Optima Tax Relief.
When Optima Tax got involved, the calls would stop, the threats would stop. It was easy like 1, 2, 3.
Optima's award-winning team of expert tax professionals took care of Eric's problem.
I owe $15,000 and now my debt is clean. I don't owe anything.
Take Eric's advice.
If you have a tax problem, you need to call Optima Tax now.
Call Optima Tax Relief for a free consultation. Call 800-919-9077. 800-919-9077. 800-919-9077.
Optima Tax Relief.
Actual client compensated for sharing their experience. Some restrictions apply. Visit OptimaTaxRelief.com for details.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. To be nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize, one must be nominated by a qualified individual or organization. A self-nomination is not allowed. Those eligible to nominate include professors at universities, former Nobel laureates, members of national governments, and officials from international peace organizations. The Nobel committees then review these nominations and select the winner through a multi-stage process of screening, assessment, and deliberation. That means that the California State Legislature, the City Council of the City of Los Angeles, the City Council of the City of Chicago, and the House of Representatives in the state of Illinois have that power to create a serious, symbolic, but serious effort at our own resistance here in the United States. Our very special guest in this hour is a regular contributor on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. With over 25 years of experience in social justice and civil rights, Diallo has been a pivotal figure in promoting policies that foster safe, healthy, and thriving communities. He currently serves as the founder and CEO of Civic Vision Strategies, a strategic consulting firm empowering organizations through transformative leadership development and community engagement strategies. Diallo, welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Thank you, Jesse, for having me.
Diallo, before I turn my attention to education and what some of the parents must be experiencing in the climate of ICE, to give you a moment to think and reflect upon that as I ask you this question, what do you think about the idea of our nominating serious resistant leaders here in the United States for the Nobel Peace Prize?
I mean, I think that's a good idea. I think it's an idea where we're kind of contrasting the environment that we're currently in, and we're uplifting folks that are doing the work on the ground in communities around the country to really push back, and really the ones that are in government positions that are trying to hold their finger in the dike as the dam is breaking. And so I think uplifting those folks, whether it's something that gets serious consideration on that level or not, I don't know, but I think it's important for folks out there to see that there are government officials that are standing up, that are trying to do the right things to protect their communities.
Diallo, I saw, and we've all witnessed, the rollout of this national presence, first in Los Angeles, where they essentially stayed within a 1 square mile protecting federal buildings. That was obviously a very, very controversial move by the President of the United States and this administration. Then we saw a similar rollout in Washington, D.C., and the presence of the National Guard in the District of Columbia, as the mission then creeped from the idea of enforcing immigration law to stopping, quote unquote, crime in the District of Columbia. Here in the city of Chicago, we have some combination of the mission creep, which is both immigration enforcement and locking up bus loads of Black folk by pulling them out of their homes without warrants and warrantless searches, repelling soldiers from their helicopters just 3 blocks from my home in South Shore. As an educator and someone who's worked in the education field, I've got to imagine that parents are feeling some significant levels of anxiety about the role that the federal government is playing at the beginning of this school year. Your thoughts, Diallo?
So here are a couple of thoughts. If you look at the communities in which these tactics are being used, they're communities that have often been disadvantaged, disenfranchised, left behind in a lot of circumstances. And then to put on top of that the stress and the trauma of an additional police force, almost Gestapo style, coming out of helicopters, military-esque style of policing, it adds to the trauma that some of these communities have already had. And I said this before on a previous show, it would be amazing if our federal government actually put the resources that they're spending on these tactics into things that actually matter within the communities. And so if you look at children going to school, police, ICE agents pulling a mother out of a car in front of a school during a school drop-off or pickup, things of that nature add trauma, not only to that family, but everybody else in that environment. Young people should be in environments where it's conducive to learning, a safe space for them. But increasingly with these tactics, it's not creating safer spaces. It's not creating an environment that's conducive to learning. And it's adding another level of stress on communities that have already been stressed out historically.
I can also imagine that parents must be feeling some kind of way about sending their children to school in the first place. I know a number of parades that once celebrated cultural heritages, particularly South American cultural heritages, have been cut. Special days and celebrations the dates have been changed, they've been frozen, owned. I think that one of the profound problems that we're looking at now is the idea that fear is now part of the American experience and process. Your thoughts on the psychological ramifications of that?
Yeah, I think the psychological ramifications are deep. And I think it is actually a tactic of the right, is to use these fear tactics. One, it plays on fears on the other side, around constituents that they care about, saying that look at all of these evil folks, we got to take on these extreme tactics because these folks need this action taken upon them. And then psychologically, to parents, to other folks within communities, there's a stress level and a fear level around even just sending your child to school beyond that which existed already. And so this is exacerbating the trauma that young people will have. And young people will remember this experience decades beyond this particular incident. As they continue to grow, they will have this psychological trauma of these police forces implementing these tactics on the ground in their communities every day and in their schools, in front of their schools.
Diallo, I can only imagine, and fortunately my children are much older now, and Jesse will be graduating from college, God willing, in May. The anxiety of going to school in the first place, given the rise in school shootings, was already a deeply troubling and traumatic potential experience in public schools and schools throughout our country. We've even seen the same behavior take place in private schools. And in addition to peeling back the onion of gun violence from these lone shooters and students who have mental health problems and challenges on this Mental Health Day in the United States, I posted on that on my Facebook page. That's what this is, a recognition of mental health. Here we have the federal government in a surreal kind of way, adding an additional trauma to the already anticipated trauma associated with what we see repeatedly on the news. And the only solution that we ever truly hear about that, well, it is effective, but increasingly losing effect, is the idea of thoughts and prayers.
Yeah, I mean, we're in a moment in our history where we have to really take a hard look at what government should be providing for communities, right? What are the things that we want government to do? So one, we all want safe, healthy, thriving communities. Safety also comes in doing the things necessary to create a safe mental health environment for our young people, an environment where it's conducive to them learning, not conducive to them having increased levels of trauma. And so as we look at what's going on, it is incumbent upon us to really be not only the resistance, but think strategically about what we want our government to look like, what do we want our schools to look like, and then have a very contrasted kind of agenda laid out that contrasts the way that this particular government is operating, the Trump administration is operating in this moment. And that is about the health, the safety, the security of our young people, the security of our families in ways that don't have over policing, that is investing in the things that actually matter, that actually help uplift communities out of the circumstances that they may find themselves in, and not use fear tactics as a tool, as a wedge within our country.
You know, Diallo, in this moment, as I listen to you, I'm reflecting upon the idea that the images are so profound that one man gets slammed, gets his face slammed, or his body slammed, or is arrested. The fear and the trauma spreads throughout the nation, almost as if that one individual is treated as an example to perpetuate and spread the fear deliberately. And now we have a government that is also filming and promoting its own online narratives of what they are doing to create that.
So there's two sets of fears that are being created. It's fear within the communities that are impacted, whether they're directly or they see it on social media or they see it on the news. But it's also the fear of the other that is created in different communities that are not directly touched by this. And so what they're doing is othering folks. So Black and brown folks, we need these extreme policing tactics to take place in Black and brown communities because there's crime and there's undocumented immigrants in our communities. And so we have to be a part of a narrative shift that changes the way kind of we look at this, and also provide different information for folks, alternative information to folks, so they can see something different than what our government is actually putting out there.
The resistance is obviously spreading. Mass marches are taking place across the country. I believe a very large march is scheduled across the country tomorrow. More and more troops are being asked from Portland, Oregon, all the way to the city of Chicago, to Los Angeles, to talk about Baltimore, Maryland, and now the people of New Orleans and Memphis are experiencing the same thing. Diallo, do you see an end in sight?
I always think there's an end in sight. I think the optimist in me will always look toward the future. And if we study history, and I know you're a big student of history, we've gone through these moments in our history where different communities have been under attack. We've seen extremism play out in this way. But it is with the courage of the people that we resist, push back, but also create an alternative vision. One of the things I love in studying the civil rights movement, it wasn't just about resistance, it was about creating an alternative vision. Dr. King talked about the alternative vision of economic freedom for Black communities that were oppressed during that moment. And I think we have to do both and. We have to stand up and say, this is not what we want. We're not going to take this. But at the same time, we have to put out an alternative platform. What do we want to see? Because that's going to galvanize folks on the fringes or folks that are kind of standing on the sidelines that are not sure. That's a galvanizing point of giving them the tools about the alternative vision that we want to see. We have to resist, but we have to create at the same time, create a vision for the future, what that will look like. And I'm optimistic that we will get there. It's going to be some dark days, some tough times, but It's something that we have to push through, and we also always have to look toward the light.
You know, I am particularly impressed with the brilliance of your analysis right there, and it reminds me of something Dr. King said when he said that the end that we seek is pre-existent in the means, which means it's not just about existence. It's also about imagining the way in which we struggle, because we have to do two things at the same time. We have to resist, and we have to offer the alternative vision that you have just suggested. I can't think of a better way of saying that. He said it this way: the end that we seek is pre-existent in the means. The means do not justify the ends. It must be thought through. It must be prayed through. We must conceive nonviolently that our behavior is a factor in the world that we want to build.
Exactly. And that is what galvanized people. Folks will come to the table when they can see a vision. And I don't commend the right for any of its tactics and strategies, but one thing that they did is they put together an agenda and they executed an agenda. They're executing that agenda to the T. They put all the pieces in place to execute that agenda. And I think those of us that are more progressive, and I don't even want to say the left, I think that have a more progress-driven agenda for this country and for our lives, must have a real progressive agenda that speaks to the kitchen table issues that folks care about, but also speaks to the vision of a future that is inclusive, that brings us all along into the prosperity that folks dream of.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. This is KBLA Talk 1580. More when we come forward with the Yellow Bros.
You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Amber Payton with BIN News Now. A Virginia grand jury has indicted Black New York Attorney General Letitia James on mortgage fraud charges. James called the case baseless, accusing Trump of political retribution.
This is nothing more than a continuation of the president's desperate weaponization of our justice system.
U.S. Attorney Lindsay Halligan, a Trump appointee, presented the case just weeks after indicting former FBI Director James Comey. A federal judge has temporarily blocked President Trump from deploying National Guard troops to Chicago for the next 2 weeks. In Memphis, Guard members began patrols today without arrest powers or firearms. Black Memphis Police Chief C.J. Davis plans to use them for traffic control and other non-enforcement duties. And some Lakers fans are suing LeBron James after his teased second decision turned out to be an ad, not a retirement announcement. Fans say they bought pricey tickets expecting his final season. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Celebrating 100 years, Mount St. Mary's University LA is dedicated to moving your life and career forward. Earn your undergraduate or graduate degree and become unstoppable. Find out how at msmu.edu.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
It's obvious Father Time is having more conversations with LeBron this year. At age 40, LeBron is dealing with health issues that never came up during his 22 years in the NBA. At the start of training camp, the Lakers medical staff advised LeBron not to practice or play in the preseason. LeBron was diagnosed with irritation in his glutes, the muscles in the rear end. Now LeBron has inflammation in the sciatica nerve, a nerve that stretches from the lower back to the legs and feet. The inflammation will keep LeBron sidelined for at least 3 to 4 weeks. He will miss the Lakers' regular season opener against Golden State on October 21st. LeBron will be 41 in December. He's been one of the NBA's more durable players throughout his career, but Father Time is in LeBron's ear. It's taking LeBron a little bit longer to recover from certain ailments. Lakers Nation needs to get prepared. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio that best music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
Hello, KBLA delegation. Tavis Smiley here. On Saturday, October 25th, LA Trade Tech becomes the epicenter of ideas that matter. The Left Coast Forum is bringing together voices that challenge, inspire, and illuminate with keynote presentations from people like noted economist Richard Wolff, the man who breaks down capitalism in ways that make sense to working folk like you and me, and Dr. Cornel West will be there, the brilliant philosopher and activist who never stops fighting for justice and speaking truth to power and to the powerless for that matter. So this isn't just another conference. This is where ideas get tested, where the conversations that shape our future begin. Multiple plenary sessions, dynamic speakers, real talk about the issues that impact our communities, and then some good food and a live band. Saturday, October 25th, LA Trade Tech, Left Coast Forum. The event is free and open to the public, but you must register at our KBLA1580.com website, where you can also peep the plenary topics. The future belongs to those who show up and engage. So don't just think about change, be part of the conversation that creates it. The Left Coast Forum is brought to you by the LA Progressive, the Empowerment Congress, Community Coalition, Partnership for Growth LA, Southwest Voter Registration Education Project, LA Care Health Plan, United Teachers Los Angeles, Black Progressive Action Coalition, St. John's Community Health, the National Lawyers Guild, the Weingart Foundation, and more. Space is limited, so if I were you, I'd register right now at KBLA1580.com. Your voice matters, your presence matters. We'll see you there.
Open enrollment is your opportunity to choose a plan that connects you to Providence's comprehensive healthcare network. Choose a plan that includes Providence and gain access to a dedicated team of highly trained primary care physicians and specialists. From nationally recognized doctors and hospitals, Providence ensures quality care is always within reach. When you choose Providence, you choose after-hours care through our nurse advice line, urgent care, or virtual express care. You choose 24/7 access through the Providence mobile app to message providers, request prescription refills, schedule appointments, check lab results, and more. This open enrollment, prioritize your well-being with the peace of mind that comes from choosing a provider that values excellence and compassionate care. Don't just choose a plan. Choose a plan dedicated to health equity and community engagement. Choose a plan that believes health is a human right. Choose a plan that delivers exceptional care and cares about your community. Choose a plan that offers Providence. Visit chooseprovidence.org to learn more.
You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. Our very special guest is Diallo Brooks, former Senior Equity Fellow at the Schott Foundation for Public Education. Diallo bridged the gap between national policymakers and grassroots education justice organizations to advance progressive racial justice policies. His fellowship embedded him within the U.S. Department of Education under the Biden administration, where he served as senior executive championing community and equity-focused policies. Diallo previously served as senior vice president of programs and advocacy at the Schott Foundation, leading grant-making and programmatic initiatives for education equity and justice. Diallo, welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Thank you, Jesse.
Diallo, what are your thoughts about the landscape of education now without federal enforcement? Increasingly, obviously, without the Civil Rights Division of the Justice Department and without a national education department that the Secretary of Education is determined to dismantle, I can only imagine that some of the organizing that was easier to do through the Department of Education is now taking place one school district, one school at a time, without the kind of coordination necessary to build a more perfect union.
Yeah, it's going to be definitely a hodgepodge landscape. And let's be clear, our landscape was definitely a hodgepodge landscape even before, because education is a local function. But you had a federal government that filled gaps, provided some civil rights oversight and support around, leadership, training, around curriculum, things of those natures that the federal government provided connection to. And so, but without a federal government, without a really functional Department of Education, we're going to see a devolution of the education landscape, where what you see in Mississippi, what you see in New York City, what you see in Chicago, what you see in LA can be very, very different depending on the jurisdiction and depending on the strength and the resources that the state and local governments are providing around education. And so we have to definitely roll up our sleeves to make sure that the expertise around the issues that are important around education are shared throughout the country, and that we stand in the gap in this moment where our education department is dysfunctional. And also, let me say one more thing, Jesse. There's also the recent recognition that folks like the Heritage Foundation and other right-wing conservative groups will be playing a significant role in what our education structure will look like going forward.
That point right there, that part right there, what role would the very people who were architects of Project 2025 play going forward as you envision it? I know that you're obviously not a supporter of it, but what are we looking at?
So what we're looking at is an indoctrination. It's the elimination of of a real history. There's going to be a lot of propaganda that's going to be promoted within our K through 12 and even higher education environments. That information is going to come from those think tanks. They're going to come from those places that are already trying to dismantle DEI and equity and other important components of our education system. And they're going to infiltrate, they're going to eliminate the context around slavery in this country, right? They're going to eliminate the significance of civil rights in this country. For people like Dolores Huerta or MLK himself may be tamped down as far as their impact. And so those are the small things of really indoctrinating folks. And school is usually an environment where folks get enlightened. They have the opportunity to broaden their thinking beyond kind of their small pods of family and friends that they're traditionally circled with. And when you have these institutions that are going to come in and help dictate an agenda that undermines the true education of young people, it's particularly dangerous, and it bleeds towards fascism within this country.
Diallo, a number of the more liberal, higher education, well-endowed institutions have capitulated to the demands of the administration. They range from admissions to curriculum to even First Amendment issues on campus. What do you see as the future in the realm of higher education when the big so-called liberal arts institutions seem incapable or unwilling to confront the resistance or to join the resistance against the authoritarian?
The dollar is a mighty, mighty foe, right? The dollar is a mighty, mighty foe. It's a mighty, mighty tool. And the federal government is using the power of money, the money that is allocated toward higher education, and they're weaponizing that toward higher education institutions. And some of these institutions that we call liberal institutions have also had kind of an interesting history as it relates to not only the resistance, but just who is involved in that process, right? They're very elitist. They're very disconnected from oftentimes communities. And so in this moment when they're sitting on large endowments, in this moment where it is important for folks to stand up, to exercise their power in a moment where there's communities that are fragile. It's important for them to stand up. And I would implore them to really think about this moment, what it means for the legacy of those institutions, if they capitulate to this administration. We need folks to stand up. We need folks to be bold. This is not a moment to stand on the sidelines. This is not a moment to shrink, because the very existence of our democracy is at stake. And education is a cornerstone. It's a pillar of a free functioning democracy.
And I think our representation. I know that Attorney Barbara Arnwine on October 15th, before the U.S. Supreme Court, is leading a march, a resistance, a speak out, a protest at the Supreme Court, given that the hearing for the Louisiana versus Calais or Robinson versus Calais case, which seeks to undermine the Voting Rights Act of 1965, could very well alter the number of African Americans in the Congress of the United States. And that body in the Congress has been the single largest proponent of federal coordination and civil rights in the schools themselves. As you know, the Federal Education Department did not come into existence until after Brown versus the Board of Education, and more specifically, 1979. That's how there's been a U.S. Department of Education. And the champions of the U.S. Department of Education, before the Hispanic Caucus was founded, was the Congressional Black Caucus. And now you find the Hispanic Caucus, the Congressional Black Caucus, and so many of the other minority caucuses united around the idea that it is federal enforcement through the Department of Education that is responsible for the limited level of justice that we have achieved in our public education system. Your thoughts before we come forward? In just a moment, when we come forward, when we come back from the break, I'd like to hear your thought on the politics of what it means to undermine the Voting Rights Act in the struggle for education. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. You're listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. My very special guest in this hour is none other than Diallo Brooks. More on KBLA Talk 1580 when we come forward.
While you're stuck in traffic, we can at least bring you up to speed on the news of the day. You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. only on KBLA Talk 1580.
Donald Trump has all but declared war on California, sending in a National Guard, blocking disaster relief, and cutting funds to our colleges. And now, he and Texas Republicans are trying to rig the next election by stealing congressional seats from black voters in states like Texas.
They want to rig these elections, and they want the power that gerrymandering provides.
Seriously, look it up. But Prop 50 is how we fight back. It gives Californians the power to fight fire with fire and beat Trump at his own game. Prop 50 creates temporary emergency congressional maps that level the playing field and protect the power of black votes. Not just in California, but across the country. Your vote matters, and the whole country is counting on California to lead. So use your vote to protect our power, our history, and our future. Vote yes on Prop 50 by November 4. Ad paid for by Yes on 50, the Election Rigging Response Act, Governor Newsom's Ballot Measure Committee, Ad Committee's top funders, HMP for Prop 50, and Fund for Policy Reform.
Established in 2020 during a time of deep racial unrest across our state and country, the Black Freedom Fund was created to make sure that leaders and organizations working to support Black communities and build power have the resources they need to stay in the fight for the long haul. We believe that those closest to the issues impacting our communities know best how to solve them. That's why in just the last 5 years, we've granted more than $45 million to over 200 grassroots organizations across California. That is the largest collective investment in Black organizing in history, and we're just getting started. We are clear-eyed and committed, more now than ever, to our people, our power, and our possibility. Join us in creating a future where Black people harness their full power to shape their lives and realize a just world for all. Learn more at fundblackfreedom.org. That's fundblackfreedom.org. The Black Freedom Fund is proud to sponsor Conversation Live Altadena Rising with James Farr on KBLA Talk 1580.
Hey there, Los Angeles. This is James Lucky Jr., publisher and editor of Los Angeles News Observer. Are you hungry for news that matters to you in the African-American communities of Los Angeles? Well, buckle up, because we got the scoop you've been craving. Stay in the know and never miss a beat with our free weekly publications conveniently available near you. Or hop on the digital wave and become an exclusive subscriber at OGNSC.com. Don't forget to join the party on Instagram and Twitter at OGNSCINC for behind-the-scenes access and sizzling updates. No more FOMO. Let's stay informed, connected, and empowered together.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. The Los Angeles Regional Food Bank is on a mission to fight hunger and provide nutritious food to those in need across our community. They partner with federal, state, and local programs advocating for better policies and funding for critical hunger relief programs like Cal Fresh, the Emergency Food Assistance Program, and the Child and Adult Care Food Program. The food bank works with coalitions and local representatives to make sure hunger is addressed in every district of LA County. They also run nutrition education campaigns, raise hunger awareness, and source nutritious food for distribution, all while supporting regulations that allow food pantries to operate safely. Want to help? Visit lafoodbank.org or call 323-234-3030 to volunteer or find a food bank near you. Together, we can ensure that no one goes hungry in Los Angeles County. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Nationwide is so much more than a great insurance company. They're one of America's largest financial services companies. Like how I'm more than Saquon Barkley, the NFL's reigning leading rusher, I'm also the NFL's leading husher. Shh, hush up back there. Wow, I might have just set the hushing record. Well, almost. For your insurance and financial needs, Nationwide is on your side.
Nationwide Investment Services Corporation, member FINRA, Columbus, Ohio.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show in this final segment on KBLA Talk 1580 with Diallo Brooks, who has more than 25 years experience in social justice and civil rights. Diallo, welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Thank you, Jesse.
Diallo, as you know, in the final 3 minutes of the program, I'm going to ask you to give us a word of hope. But before we get to that final 3 minutes, I did have a question just before we came forward, and that was the relationship between the political empowerment of groups who are really largely, since the Voting Rights Act of 1965, responsible for the desegregation of Congress itself. It really wasn't about the shape of the congressional districts, the Voting Rights Act. It was about giving African Americans and Hispanics and those who have historically represented inferior school districts, districts that had ghettos and barrios and trailer parks in them, an opportunity to have their voices heard, to fight for resources for these communities that had been historically neglected. And I am not unmindful of the history after Brown versus the Board of Education, where the state of Virginia in some of its counties even made the argument that they don't have to have a public education system at all, rather than desegregate. With that said, without federal enforcement, there's always the possibility that the country could slip back into a logic of states' rights, local control, including but not limited to, we don't have to have an education system at all, let alone educating Blacks, Hispanics, working class, and poor white folk.
Mm-hmm.
Your thoughts, Diallo?
So my thoughts on this is it's a very serious moment in our history. We have already taken steps backward. So let me be clear. Many years ago, working for another organization, there was a lot of push around what our federal judiciary looks like, right? Who sits in those seats? And oftentimes we didn't pay attention to that because fighting for the federal courts wasn't the kind of hot, sexy issue to fight for. Fast forward, conservatives have put in judges on the district court level all the way up through the Supreme Court. Those folks, if you noticed, when asked questions around the validity of the decided case of Brown v. Board, were non-committal. They didn't want to answer that question because strategically they know that the historical fight around Brown v. Board created a space where it was a more inclusive environment, right? An environment where more of us could have access, not just in education, but across the board. It opened up the floodgates around that. And you look at the civil rights victories and other victories, the voting rights victories, those opened up access for those of us that have been often left behind to have our voices elevated in the political discourse. We're in a moment where those voices are being tamped out because they know that the resistance is connected to those voices, those people, those boots that walk through the halls of Congress on both sides, that walk in the White House, that walk in our federal judiciary, that those voices are the opposition. Those are voices of reason. And they cannot have the power and control that they want if they continue to have those voices. So they're doing everything they can do. It is their agenda. It is a 50-year-old agenda to roll back all of those provisions that prevent them from having the power that they want. They're executing it now. They're in execution phase. They failed to win. They lost in state legislatures. They lost in governor's races, but they built the momentum. They proliferated the issues that they cared about in all of those spaces until they got to the point where they were able to win. We're at a tipping point. We have to stand up. We have to be a part of not only the resistance, but a visioning of the future we want to see. And it does not mean sitting on the sidelines, sitting on our hands and being quiet in this moment.
You know, before I get to your word of hope, I just want to say that, first of all, how much I appreciate you. But I also want to share with you that my mind requires two things: the expectation of hope, the infinite possibility of what we can become, i.e. building a more perfect union. But I also prepare my mind for the possibility of disappointment. I don't like the ebbs and flows between that which I hope for and then the letdown, the disappointment. There's such a dark space in that letdown and in that disappointment. So to anticipate it, I prepare for the hope that Democrats might regain control of Congress. It is hard for me to imagine all that we've been through, that if we don't regain control of Congress or right course the trajectory of this nation, just how disappointed I would be. Because for them to still have Congress, for us to still have 4 more years or 3 more years or 2 more years of Donald Trump is going to be that kind of letdown. Our hopes and expectations are that everything is going to go our way, while Donald Trump continues to put pressure on blue cities, on the Voting Rights Act, on the Education Department, and members of our coalition. But then I think I also, in this hope dynamic, Brother Brooks, have to prepare myself for what Dr. King called the possibility of infinite disappointment.
Right. Well, I'll say this. Hope without action is futile. Hope without having action and tangible strategy behind it is futile because we're just hoping, we're wishing.
Yeah.
We hope something will happen.
Yeah.
And, you know, based on your Christian belief and my Christian belief, it is the action that is required to realize that faith. right? It is the tools that we've been given inherently that allow us to overcome. We have overcome before. We will overcome again, but it requires strategy. It requires action. And if you want to put it in the party context, Democrats have to do their job differently. They cannot be the status quo. They can't stand in the middle and act as if change is going to come. They have to engage. They have to listen. And then they have to execute on what communities really, really want. And they can't be on both sides in order to win. In order to win, we have to push forward. We have to listen to the streets. We have to listen to the ground, to those barrios and those neighborhoods and those communities across the country that are yearning for change. We have to elevate that voice, permeate the country with that energy and that noise, but also have a strategic objective that we execute on every single day and bring everybody with us in that fight.
I think in that persistence and in that resilience, it helps you fight the valley of life.
Right.
Knowing that the valley of life does exist. I'd love to stay on the mountaintop. We want to be on the mountaintop with our entire nation. But it is in our resistance and our persistence and in our resilience over time, the TDT in math equations, right? Over time, that actually matters to our own psychological development. We can't give up. That's what I think I heard you say. Diallo Brooks, thank you for being our very special guest on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Thank you very much, Jesse.
Look forward to having you again sometime soon. Let's talk about it with Diallo Brooks. He is a regular contributor to the Jesse Jackson Jr. So you're listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. More with Gina Towns and Todd Yeary when we come forward.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Amber Payton with BIN News Now. A Virginia grand jury has indicted Black New York Attorney General Letitia James on mortgage fraud charges. James called the case baseless, accusing Trump of political retribution.
This is nothing more than a continuation of the president's desperate weaponization of our justice system.
U.S. Attorney Lindsay Halligan, a Trump appointee, presented the case just weeks after indicting former FBI Director James Comey. A federal judge has temporarily blocked President Trump from deploying National Guard troops to Chicago for the next 2 weeks. In Memphis, Guard members began patrols today without arrest powers or firearms. Black Memphis Police Chief C.J. Davis plans to use them for traffic control and other non-enforcement duties. And some Lakers fans are suing LeBron James after his teased second decision turned out to be an ad, not a retirement announcement. Fans say they bought pricey tickets expecting his final season. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Celebrating 100 years, Mount St. Mary's University LA is dedicated to moving your life and career forward. Earn your undergraduate or graduate degree and become unstoppable. Find out how at msmu.edu.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
It's obvious Father Time is having more conversations with LeBron this year. At age 40, LeBron is dealing with health issues that never came up during his 22 years in the NBA. At the start of training camp, the Lakers medical staff advised LeBron not to practice or play in the preseason. LeBron was diagnosed with irritation in his glutes, the muscles in the rear end. Now LeBron has inflammation in the sciatica nerve, a nerve that stretches from the lower back to the legs and feet. The inflammation will keep LeBron sidelined for at least 3 to 4 weeks. He will miss the Lakers' regular season opener against Golden State on October 21st. LeBron will be 41 in December. He's been one of the NBA's more durable players throughout his career, but Father Time is in LeBron's ear. It's taking LeBron a little bit longer to recover from certain ailments. Lakers Nation needs to get prepared. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
Hello, KBLA delegation. Tavis Smiley here. On Saturday, October 25th, LA Trade Tech becomes the epicenter of ideas that matter. The Left Coast Forum is bringing together voices that challenge, inspire, and illuminate, with keynote presentations from people like noted economist Richard Wolff, the man who breaks down capitalism in ways that make sense to working folk like you and me, and Dr. Cornel West will be there, the brilliant philosopher and activist who never stops fighting for justice and speaking truth to power and to the powerless, for that matter. So this isn't just another conference. This is where ideas get tested, where the conversations that shape our future begin. Multiple plenary sessions, dynamic speakers, real talk about the issues that impact our communities, and then some good food and a live band. Saturday, October 25th, LA Trade Tech, Left Coast Forum. The event is free and open to the public, but you must register at our KBLA1580.com website, where you can also peep the plenary topics. The future belongs to those who show up and engage. So don't just think about change, be part of the conversation that creates it. The Left Coast Forum is brought to you by the LA Progressive, the Empowerment Congress, Community Coalition, Partnership for Growth LA, Southwest Voter Registration Education Project, LA Care Health Plan, United Teachers Los Angeles, Black Progressive Action Coalition, St. John's Community Health, the National Lawyers Guild, the Weingart Foundation, and more. Space is limited, so if I were you, I'd register right now at KBLA1580.com. Your voice matters, your presence matters. We'll see you there.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. This is Fat Meat Fridays on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. Gina Towns, my co-host, is the president and CEO of 519 Productions and the executive producer, creative director, and program director of the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on Smiley Audio Media's KBLA Talk 1580. She's also the host of Reflectivity. On this series, we call it Fat Meat Fridays, where we not only review what we went through and discussed with our other guests throughout the week, but we also pick up on some new news items that come before us just to kind of round up the week. A graduate of Hampton University with a Bachelor of Arts in Mass Communications, Arts, and Journalism. She also recently earned her Master of Arts in Theology and Social Justice from the Princeton Theological Seminary. Gina co-produced the Emmy Award-nominated documentary Hampton University, One of the Wonders of the World, and as a songwriter, co-producer, and performer, her single Yes hit number 26 with a bullet on the Billboard charts. Gina, welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Well, welcome to me, I suppose. You've been on the air for a while. You guys had a great conversation in the last hour, you and Diallo.
Yeah, Diallo's really something, and his knowledge of the nation's education system, its history, the integration of the federal rules and standards that have changed the course of education matter in the current dialogue as we witness the unprecedented anti-education, anti-intellectual environment that is being established and promulgated and promoted by this administration. So Diallo's contribution has him in great demand, and we're grateful on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show that he can contribute on education issues to our show once a week, twice a week, or once every 2 weeks, because that's just how quickly the news cycle around education is actually changing.
Absolutely. Well, he is a host on our monthly series called Let's Talk About It. And if you go to our podcasts that are on Apple Podcasts, you can find them at KBLA and Spreaker. You will find Diallo Brooks and much, much more if you download the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Gina, I understand that Reverend Dr. Yeary has reached out to us regarding a critical issue that has surfaced since we last had him on Wealthy Wednesdays with Dr. S. Todd Yeary.
Yeah.
Dr. S. Todd Yeary is the president of the Yeary Firm, a Maryland-based litigation and government relations firm, and also serves as senior pastor of the Douglas Memorial Community Church of Baltimore and affiliates. Dr. Yeary is also former chief executive officer of the Rainbow Push Coalition, the international affairs organization founded by the Reverend Jesse Jackson, who celebrated his 84th birthday just this past Wednesday. He's in our prayers as he struggles with Parkinson's, but I'm particularly honored to welcome Dr. Todd Yeary forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. Dr. Yeary?
It is always good to be with you on Fatback Friday. Listen, and it's
Todd, we are really going to get some greens in a pot for you so you can have some fat back. This is fat meat, but it's still fat meat, I suppose. One thing I know about you right now is not only do you have one foot in the courtroom and one foot in the pulpit, you've got both feet at the driver's pedals in your car.
yeah, because I'm going to the barbershop. Now, listen, you can't show up at church on Sunday and not have it all together. So I have competing interests. And while you're talking about my greens, I'll take smoked turkey if you don't have anything else, but I prefer. I'm just going to leave it right there.
I
I
understand.
prefer. Okay.
Dr. Yeary,
All
we
right.
have about a minute and a half before we come forward. Give us a brief take on what's going on with the firefighters, and of course, when we come forward, we will we'll dig deeper into it with the history and the knowledge that you want to share. Dr. Yeary?
Yeah, I mean, here's what we have with the current administration and the assault on opportunity and access in America. That unresolved issues of equal employment opportunity are now hanging in the balance. One such case is the case of the Lewis class, Lewis versus City of Chicago. This case goes back literally almost 30 years now, and is still not fully resolved because if you look at the numbers of representation on the City of Chicago Fire Department, other major fire departments across the country, it is not reflective of the makeup of the communities that they serve. And part of it is because the process to be able to get some of these public sector jobs carried this arbitrary process of testing that allowed for exclusion of some communities. And so this case went all the way up to the Supreme Court, came back 9-0 in terms of how the case would be reviewed and scrutinized. The late Justice Antonin Scalia wrote the opinion. Hard to get a 9-0 in your favor with Justice Scalia. And yet we're still dealing with this issue to this day. So I'll give a bit more about the history, but it is something that is going on real time. And it is poignant because of where we are in terms of this current federal administration.
Looking forward to continuing this conversation. Gina, I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm going to help Gina get some practice on these Fridays on how to transition between these segments. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580. More on Fat Meat Fridays with Gina Towns and Dr. S. Todd Yeary when we come forward.
A safe place to go loud. A great place for progressive politics. KBLA Talk 1580.
Eric was way behind on his taxes.
I owed a lot of money to the IRS, almost $15,000. I tried to make payments.
The IRS wasn't satisfied with Eric's efforts, so they came after him full force.
They're coming to put a lien and a hold on all my income, my home, my car. I was just overwhelmed at what to do.
Then Eric called Optima Tax Relief.
When Optima Tax got involved, the calls would stop, the threats would stop. It was easy like 1, 2, 3.
Optima's award-winning team of expert tax professionals took care of Eric's problem.
I owe $15,000 and now my debt is clean. I don't owe anything.
Take Eric's advice.
If you have a tax problem, you need to call Optima Tax now.
Call Optima Tax Relief for a free consultation. Call 800-919-9077. 800-919-9077. 800-919-9077.
Optima Tax Relief.
Actual client compensated for sharing their experience. Some restrictions apply. Visit OptimaTaxRelief.com for details.
Let's go! You're still glowing, flirting, grooving. You still got it. But your immune system weakens as you age, making it harder to fight flu, pneumococcal pneumonia, RSV, and COVID-19. Vaccines are a key part of any health routine. and help strengthen your immune response. Ask your doctor or pharmacist which vaccines you need. Schedule in minutes at vaxassist.com. Sponsored by Pfizer.
It's Cybersecurity Awareness Month. LifeLock is here with tips to help protect your identity. Use strong passwords, set up multi-factor authentication, report scams, and update your software. And for comprehensive identity protection, LifeLock is your best choice. LifeLock alerts you to suspicious uses of your personal information and fixes identity theft, guaranteed, or your money back. Start your protection today with a 30-day free trial at LifeLock.com. Use promo code NEWS. Terms apply.
Hello, KBLA delegation. Tavis Smiley here. On Saturday, October 25th, LA Trade Tech becomes the epicenter of ideas that matter. The Left Coast Forum is bringing together voices that challenge, inspire, and illuminate with keynote presentations from people like noted economist Richard Wolff, the man who breaks down capitalism in ways that make sense to working folk like you and me, and Dr. Cornel West will be there, the brilliant philosopher and activist who never stops fighting for justice and speaking truth to power and to the powerless for that matter. So this isn't just another conference. This is where ideas get tested, where the conversations that shape our future begin. Multiple plenary sessions, dynamic speakers, real talk about the issues that impact our communities, and then some good food and a live band. Saturday, October 25th, LA Trade Tech, Left Coast Forum. The event is free and open to the public, but you must register at our KBLA1580.com website, where you can also peep the plenary topics. The future belongs to those who show up and engage. So don't just think about change, be part of the conversation that creates it. The Left Coast Forum is brought to you by the LA Progressive, the Empowerment Congress, Community Coalition, Partnership for Growth LA, Southwest Voter Registration Education Project, LA Care Health Plan, United Teachers Los Angeles, Black Progressive Action Coalition, St. John's Community Health, the National Lawyers Guild, the Weingart Foundation, and more. Space is limited, so if I were you, I'd register right now at KBLA1580.com. Your voice matters, your presence matters. We'll see you there.
This is KBLA Talk 1580, where hate loses and love wins.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. In this episode and edition of Fat Meat Fridays with Gina Towns. Gina transitioned her skills into full-time ministry in Chicago and later in Atlanta. She spent a decade as an executive marketing, fundraising, and events director at Morehouse School of Medicine, where she helped to raise millions of dollars and foster goodwill. A member of Delta Sigma Theta sorority, Kappa Tau Alpha Journalism Society, and Alpha Kappa Mu, Gina is listed among who's who among American women. Gina, welcome forward to the Fat Meat Fridays.
Hi,
show.
Jesse Jackson Jr. We are at Reflectivity for our week.
We are reflecting with Dr. S. Todd Yeary. Dr. Yeary, just before the break, we were discussing the challenge of being a firefighter in the modern era, represented by unions who don't necessarily reflect their membership.
Well, you just framed it in a way that requires a bit more analysis. Let me start with the obligatory protocol. Let me go oop and make sure that I honor correctly. You know, I don't want no trouble on these airways. So here's the deal. Let's go back in time. If we understand the evolution of the building of a Black middle class, a lot of it was built upon access to public sector jobs, which provided stability and longevity in terms of pension, but also allowed the opportunity to demonstrate competency to even qualify. There's this notion in America that equal employment opportunity is a way to provide unqualified people an opportunity to get a job or just find a hustle. So what happened with the 1995, yes, 1995, 30 years ago, same year that the Million Man March took place, almost 30 years ago to this day, coming up on October 16th. There's a test given, and the city of Chicago arbitrarily sets a standard. Who would be well qualified, who would be qualified, who would be not qualified. So let's take well qualified and not qualified out of the equation. If you were qualified, many of those who fell within the qualified scoring, which the city set, were denied opportunities. And so some of the individuals, Arthur Lewis was the lead plaintiff in the Lewis versus City of Chicago case, went to court to say that to exclude folks who had taken the exam based on the opportunities available at that time was discriminatory, particularly when we look at not only disparate effect, but disparate impact. The city argued that the candidate's complaint was not timely, and the Supreme Court determined that every time the city hired from that candidate list was a new violation, particularly if the testing process was violative of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 under Title VII. The plaintiffs prevailed. Out of that, 111 persons by way of lottery were selected for jobs as part of the settlement. But now here we are at version 2.0 of that ruling, where we're starting to look at not only who gets in the door, but what does their career trajectory look like? If I've been denied opportunity, by the time the case settled and the injunction was entered, the 1995 exam, it was now 2011. 16 years pass. Now you have the effect, the ongoing effect of discriminatory conduct, and you want to say to these 111 who will ultimately get a hiring opportunity that your progression is going to look much different than somebody else who took the exam in 95 and let's say they got hired in 99. We're still fighting over that. The reason this is important is that part of the construction of the settlement was that the union contract with local number 2 would include Appendix G. Now, this is particularly important to us in this space because, Congressman, your father was a part of helping to facilitate the process of resolving the 1980 dispute. This is how far back this goes. So you've got a 1995 test, that's 30 years ago. You've got a 1980 strike, that's how far back we have issues, and we still don't have them resolved to this day. And so here's where we are. The City Council of Chicago, the committee, the Workforce Committee, has basically approved officially the proposal of the updated union contract. And this contract draft omits the section of the contract that addresses the remedy of disparate employment opportunities in the city of Chicago. And so
Todd,
this conversation.
How widespread is this? How widespread is this problem?
Let me quote Childish Gambino. This is America.
So the local fire departments all over the country who have a similar problem based upon inherent discrimination that was involved in the testing that had been resolved, certainly in the city of Chicago, theoretically in 1995. But we're still looking at closing the gap from those 121 firemen who were denied access to their hiring practice in 1995. We're still dealing with it in 2025.
We're still dealing with the residual effects of institutionalized exclusion and discrimination writ large. This applies specifically to public hiring with the Chicago Fire Department. There's a similar case in New York with the Fire Department of New York. It is the reality that what the nation is grappling with in real time, right here today, is the ongoing effect of the conditions that not only fueled your father's work that we've kind of inherited to some degree, but also the reality that, equal justice under law is just not equal. It never has been. And so we've got a lot of work to do.
Gina?
Todd, as I'm listening to this issue, while it may be specific to firefighters, as we are discussing, it really permeates things like testing scores to get into law school and medical school. And so you saw a shift at some point from having to take the SAT to the ACT, and which ones were more amenable or to maybe not test at all. And so the equality issue, and I think maybe that's what's at the bottom of all of this, is that we continue to try to strive for equality. And some people are just tired of the whole notion of Black people having equality, let alone equity.
Well, you hit on it, right? Testing is at the root. Testing, whether you're talking about, quote, standardized testing or literacy testing, where you got to guess jelly beans in a jar, testing has been used to exclude, as a matter of initial review, folks who can do. Now, if I'm the oppressor and I get to make the exam, then I'm going to craft the exam to my benefit. And so whether it's the SAT, the LSAT, the GMAT, the GRE, all of them have gone through these periodic reviews because the algorithms that are used to define and design them are designed in the same rubric of the oppression and discrimination that happens on the streets every day.
So the de jure question, according to the law, that's what that means, by right, is different than the de facto question of what's taking place in fact.
It is, with this caveat. We've never seen an offense to the de jure analysis, the legal analysis by a high court, than what we've seen today. And it's kind of embodied in the dissents that we've seen coming from Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson.
Gina, I think we're having some Wi-Fi problems with Dr. Yuri. Gina, I mean, I'm sitting here amazed that the government itself is now closed the Civil Rights Department of the Justice Department, essentially gutting it, with these unresolved cases that are still sitting out here in the nation. We're talking about firefighters, but I also know that Chicago teachers are in a struggle as well. I also know that teachers around our country are going to be in a similar struggle. And Todd was very clear that when you think about all public workers, I believe the more than 300,000 African-American women who've lost their jobs in Donald Trump's rollback and scale back, that the remedies that they have before the law, and certainly the remedies that they have before the federal judiciary, to quote Howard Thurman, we are a people whose backs are against the wall. Jinx.
It takes me back, and I'm glad you bring up the hounds of hell that Howard Thurman talks about, because that has been part of what Diallo talked about. Is there is enough trauma, generational trauma that African Americans have suffered in even trying to live up to be better than. And of course, we all grew up with, well, you have to be twice as good,
just to be equal,
just to be
considered equal. Absolutely.
And I brought this, as we do our review somewhat from the week, I am highly reminded of our program yesterday with Dr. Sipes and PL Da Silva, in which we had a very long conversation, a 2-hour one, about unions, about what we remember and how they bargained. There was a training that took place there was support for the unions, but I just don't know if there was always that support for African Americans as they did enter into the unions.
You know, I can add this, Gina, because I thought Dr. Sipes and Pio were touching upon it, but if I could go right to the point, African Americans and America was a slave labor system and a free labor system. And as we moved from the slave labor system, labor had a reckoning in the United States with what constituted, you know, labor, a man's labor. Even the Memphis sanitation workers, Dr. Yuri, I am a man. I have families. I have a family to feed. I have children to feed. I have children to educate. I am a man. I get up and I go to work every day. But Dr. Sipes said yesterday, the labor movement that was aggressive in that era became the movement for trade unionism. And with the trade unionism, the trade union movement, it's extremely political. Even though we've had champions of African Americans in labor like Bill Lucy and others who've stood up for Black folk in the context of unions, they found themselves fighting for us to participate in trade unionism, but the system itself still had a profound labor problem coming out of not paying people for the work that they did, the 8-hour workday, the struggle for benefits, the struggle for a living and a lovable wage to provide for one's family. You know, what constitutes an adequate wage coming out of that? You know, Dr. Sipes essentially said that the trade union movement from the AFL-CIO in Europe is fundamentally different than the trade union movement here in the United States that has essentially collapsed and capitulated to the politics of the era.
And isn't that because we didn't want you to be free to work outside of our own leadership and guidance? I mean, we wanted you to work for us. It's like you said, Jesse, people in their idea of freedom. I'm free to do what I have liberty to do with you what I want to do. You don't have liberty to do for yourself.
That's exactly right. Todd, when we come forward on Jesse Jackson Jr. show, KBLA Talk 1580, we're going to continue this conversation with Dr. S. Todd Yuri and Gina Towns. We're going to reflect upon the shows that we've had this week, and we're going to talk about some of the extraordinary contributions that others have made to the idea of ending slavery in its various forms. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. When we come forward, more on KBLA Talk 1580.
The station you turn to when you've had it up to here with cultural incompetence. KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Amber Payton with BIN News Now. Black Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass is facing new questions after the Palisades fire report revealed an earlier blaze was not fully extinguished.
Looking at what the resources are and knowing that the fire department in general needs more.
The fire, first set on New Year's Day, smoldered underground for a week before reigniting. Bass admits the LA Fire Department needs help. The federal government shutdown has reached day 10 and layoffs are now underway. The White House Budget Office confirmed reduction in force plans have begun, but did not say how many workers are affected. The Senate will not vote again on measures to end the shutdown until Tuesday after both party bills failed Thursday. And Black Basketball Hall of Famer Paul Pierce was arrested in Los Angeles after allegedly being found asleep at the wheel on the 101 freeway. The California Highway Patrol says he was booked on suspicion of DUI and later released. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Celebrating 100 years, Mount St. Mary's University LA is dedicated to moving your life and career forward. Earn your undergraduate or graduate degree and become unstoppable. Find out how at msmu.edu.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
It's obvious Father Time is having more conversations with LeBron this year. At age 40, LeBron is dealing with health issues that never came up during his 22 years in the NBA. At the start of training camp, the Lakers medical staff advised LeBron not to practice or play in the preseason. LeBron was diagnosed with irritation in his glutes, the muscles in the rear end. Now LeBron has inflammation in the sciatica nerve, a nerve that stretches from the lower back to the legs and feet. The inflammation will keep LeBron sidelined for at least 3 to 4 weeks. He will miss the Lakers' regular season opener against Golden State on October 21st. LeBron will be 41 in December. He's been one of the NBA's more durable players throughout his career, but Father Time is in LeBron's ear. It's taking LeBron a little bit longer to recover from certain ailments. Lakers Nation needs to get prepared. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
Whoa,
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
Hi, I'm Jesse Jackson Jr., inviting you to join me weekdays at 12 noon, right after Tavis Smiley, here on KBLA Talk 1580. As a law school graduate and a theologian with a firm grasp of our body politic given almost 2 decades in Congress, my show is the fresh new home of an authentic, uncompromised quest for transformation and salvation, both personal and collectively, as I vigorously interrogate the theological and symbolic meanings embedded in our society. I promise to leverage my knowledge of history, theology, and both international and domestic issues to imagine an inclusive vision for the future, which I hope will inspire all of us to pursue life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness as a given, not just an aspiration.
Flu, babe. Did you take DayQuil Intense Flu yet?
Nah, I got this. Ugh, okay, I don't got this.
You stay on the couch, and I'll grab the DayQuil.
Undo your flu symptoms with DayQuil Intense Flu. DayQuil Intense Flu provides powerful relief of your flu symptoms.
I'm ready for that to-do list.
Wow, you do got this.
DayQuil Intense Flu. The daytime coughing, aching, fever, under your flu medicine. Use as directed. Keep out of reach of children.
It's Cybersecurity Awareness Month. LifeLock is here with tips to help protect your identity. Use strong passwords, set up multi-factor authentication, report scams, and update your software. And for comprehensive identity protection, LifeLock is your best choice. LifeLock alerts you to suspicious uses of your personal information and fixes identity theft, guaranteed, or your money back. Start your protection today with a 30-day free trial at LifeLock.com. Use promo code NEWS. Terms apply.
Find a righteous rage and don't be afraid to say what you see. We're KBLA Talk 1580.
Jesse Jackson Jr. This is the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm loving that bass line that came in there. Boom, 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 boom. You're listening to Fat Meat Fridays and Reflectivity with Gina Towns on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on Fat Meat Fridays. Gina, welcome forward to the show.
Thanks for another great week, Jesse Jackson Jr.
And I'm particularly honored that our very special guest, Dr. S. Todd Yeary, who is the host of our program, Wealthy Wednesdays with Todd Yeary, is also joining us on this greasy Fat Meat Friday. Dr. Yeary, welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show and Reflectivity with Gina Towns.
I'm reflecting on greasy. You talking my kind of
talk. Gina?
I'm not touching that.
Well, let's see. Sean Diddy Combs got 50 months. That's a lot of time, Todd, talking of greasy.
Oh, let us go into our week of review.
Okay. Well, I just figured we'd hang around that back.
Collard greens, a little cornbread.
Jerry curls.
So, we celebrated Reverend Jackson's birthday.
Yes, we did. And I thought that Tavis Smiley's tribute to Dad and Reverend Sharpton's tribute to Dad were particularly emotional. Tavis, the last time he was in town, spent some very private moments with my father while he was at the hospital, and it was moving for Tavis. It was moving for Dad, who sometimes, you know, isn't very audible, doesn't open his eyes on some days. He's kind of in a state where he's very present. His mind is functioning, but there is a darkness. And when he heard Tavis's voice, he opened his eyes. I mean, it's got to be one of the most recognizable voices in America, and certainly in talk radio, but anywhere in the world. And he looked over at Tavis. He held his hand. He didn't want to let go of it. And that was a beautiful moment. And Tavis reflected upon that on the show. And Reverend Sharpton reflected upon the history that he has shared with Reverend Jackson since he was 12 years old as a young preacher, and just how much Jesse Jackson means to him and the influence that Reverend Jackson has had over his life, and how, you know, it changed his life, and how he has dedicated himself and has emerged probably as the most recognizable and preeminent African-American leader in the nation today, with tremendous platforms and tremendous reach and tremendous respect from our community, but communities that far exceed beyond our community. And I'm so glad to see Reverend Sharpton, Reverend Dr. Todd Yeary, and yes, Tavis in his own way continuing the work of Jesse Jackson. Dr. Yeary, your thoughts about Reverend Jesse Jackson on his 84th birthday?
I'm chuckling out loud. As you know, I was in Chicago this week. I went by to see Reverend yesterday before leaving. And as we would typically see in the office, the news is on. He's listening to what's going on in terms of the conditions in the world. When your brother Jonathan, Congressman Jackson, came by, I think we were all having a conversation. And interestingly, your dad, you know, opens his eyes, he looks around, he sees who's there, and then he starts talking. Now, you know, when your father starts talking, there's an instruction in there somewhere. And he was talking about the political reality of this effort to try to reconfigure the House by doing mid-decennial redrawing of districts across states. And your father, ever so present, was very clear that we can't get so caught up in the emotion of party politics that we disconnect from the obligation of politics to address ongoing concerns, be they race, gender, ableism, ageism, that to a great degree, our politics in America is not failing just some of us, it's failing all of us. And your dad was still very present. And I could look, you know, when your parents say something and you know you hear them, but you're trying to pretend that you don't hear them, you go, huh? I said huh a lot yesterday before I went to the airport, and I was like, man, this clock ain't moving fast enough for me to go get on this airplane, because this dude's gonna give me an assignment in about 2 good minutes. But he's still very passionate and still very present. Our challenge is who, as they say in sports, who's next up to step in and take this banner forward.
He loves him some Reverend S. Todd Yeary.
And rightfully
Thank you
so.
for your friendship with the Reverend Todd, and we're so grateful for you and your contribution on this show.
Yeah.
Gina, on Tuesday, Barbara Arnwine raised this question of October 15th of the Robinson versus Clay decision. And I know that Reverend Jesse Jackson, if he were capable, he would be there with Barbara. He would be demanding that Todd Yeary come on down from Baltimore and be there with Barbara. He would ask Al Sharpton to be there with Barbara. That's like Jesse Jackson living in the flesh, isn't it, Todd? He would have you there with Barbara in front of the Supreme Court, wouldn't he?
Todd?
I think we might have lost Todd. Well, he would have you there, Gina Towns, for sure.
He would. But before we get to Barbara, I just wanted to make one last comment on the issue of Parkinson's and the fact that Reverend Dr. Todd Urey, Deacon Extraordinaire, Esquire, really was even braced. And I think what
Yeah,
you
that's
see,
not past tense. He'll do it today. Don't get it
he'll
twisted.
do it today. If he did it before, he
Can you
can
hear
do
me?
it.
Yes, we can.
Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, dementia are very difficult diseases. I am reminded to talk about that because today, October 10th, is World Mental Health Day. And so when we see our loved ones in situations where these are diseases that affect the mind, certainly it takes a toll on our own mental health. And so we give observation and raise awareness to the importance of mental well-being. This is an effort to advance mental health, education awareness, and advocacy against the social stigma of dealing with our mental health. We do have to remember that we're not alone, especially when we are in our alone moments and dealing with our ailing parents.
You know, I was talking with Congressman Jonathan Jackson the other day in Kankakee, Illinois, and he's thinking about offering an amendment based upon our own family's experience that when you have an aging parent or an elderly parent, it seems only right, Dr. Urey, that younger children of these parents should be able to put their parents on their health care. I think it's a great amendment. I think it's a great idea because those who've borne the burden of our developments and our lives ought not be struggling with care at this stage, at their most vulnerable stage of their lives. Dr. Urey?
It is a critical point, and I think he should do it because one of the greatest contributors to the depletion of generational Black wealth is the exorbitant cost of senior care.
Yeah.
When I watched my mother and her siblings go back to take care of my grandmother, they were in rotation. My grandmother never had to leave her home. But now the burdens are such that you have to commit so much of wealth accumulation to even get senior care.
Yes.
That many people end up with watching their loved ones die broke because we've lost our sense of humanity to make sure that they're taken care of in their senior years. It's a big deal, and I'm all for, look, put that bill out there and let's go for it.
I mean, it's actually true. There was a time, and I'll take my mom, for example. She taught for 35 years. And she came from a generation where you really didn't have to worry about paying for anything. My mother did not have hospital bills when she went to the hospital because everything was paid for. But that generation slowly, and they lived a long time. Now you see, those particular ones of our ancestors or our elders rather are in their late 80s into their 90s and have done very well. But I will tell you this. That is not so coming down into the next generations because we don't have the same kind of health care and we don't have the same kind of longevity in the health care that we need.
Well, in just a few short moments, we will be coming forward on KBLA Talk 1580. This is Fat Meat Fridays and Reflectivity with Gina Towns. On Fridays, our very special guest is none other than Dr. S. Todd Urey. He has 1 foot in the pulpit, 1 foot in the courtroom, both feet in reality. And I'm so glad that he's going to be sending the final segment with us when we come forward. And I know that he's preparing a 3-minute sermon of hope towards the end of our program. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. More when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
Say the quiet part out loud. KBLA Talk 1580.
Donald Trump has all but declared war on California, sending in a National Guard, blocking disaster relief, and cutting funds to our colleges. And now, he and Texas Republicans are trying to rig the next election by stealing congressional seats from Black voters in states like Texas.
They want to rig these elections, and they want the power that gerrymandering provides.
Seriously, look it up. But Prop 50 is how we fight back. It gives Californians the power to fight fire with fire and beat Trump at his own game. Prop 50 creates temporary emergency congressional maps that level the playing field and protect the power of Black votes. Not just in California, but across the country. Your vote matters, and the whole country is counting on California to lead. So use your vote to protect our power, our history, and our future. Vote yes on Prop 50 by November 4th. Ad paid for by Yes on 50, the Election Rigging Response Act, Governor Newsom's Ballot Measure Committee, Ad Committee's top funders, HMP for Prop 50, and Fund for Policy Reform.
Think Verizon, the best 5G network, is expensive? Think again. Bring in your AT&T or T-Mobile bill to a Verizon store, and we'll give you a better deal. Now, what to do with your unwanted bills? Maybe turn them into paper airplanes headed to See Ya Never AT&T and T-Mobile. Jokes aside, the best 5G network has you covered with the most ways to save on plans, streaming, and phone deals. So bring in your bill to your local Verizon store, and we'll give you a better deal. Rankings based on Root Metric True Score report dated 1H 2025. Your results may vary. Must provide a postpaid consumer mobile bill dated within the past 45 days. Bill must be in the same name as the person who made the deal. Additional terms apply.
At Charmin, we heard you shouldn't talk about going to the bathroom in public, so we decided to sing about it.
Light a candle, pour some wine. Grab a roll, the soft kind for a little me time. Charmin Ultra Soft Smooth Tear. Wavy edges for my rear. So let the softness caress your soul. Just relax, you're on a roll. Let her rip. Charmin Ultra Soft Smooth Tear.
Charmin Ultra Soft Smooth Tear has the same softness you love. Now with wavy edges that tear better than the leading one-ply brand. Enjoy the go with Charmin.
Yeah. The California Crusader newspaper would like to thank all of our subscribers for their support throughout the years, proudly serving the South Los Angeles and South Bay areas for more than 40 years. The California Crusader is a multicultural, Black-owned, adjudicated newspaper that focuses on providing newsworthy information to the people in our community. We're constantly looking for ways to assist businesses in our community to connect with our subscribers. We provide low-cost, effective ways to promote your business with our reasonable and affordable advertising rates. You can participate by suggesting, sharing, and submitting your stories on the California Crusader newspaper Community Share Facebook group page, or visit our website at cal-cruise-news.com. That's calcruisenews.com. Then click on the Submit Now button located on the top right corner of the homepage, or text CCN to 42828. Again, text CCN to 42828. The California Crusader newspaper, working together to build a better community for our future. Subscribe today.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. Worried about eviction? You have rights, and Stay Housed LA can help. Stay Housed LA is a partnership between LA County, the City of Los Angeles, and local service providers. From Lancaster to Long Beach, we're here to help you with tenant education workshops, legal clinics, free legal services for eligible tenants, and online resources about tenant protection laws. Don't face eviction alone. Call our hotline at 1-888-694-0040. That's 1-888-694-0040. Or visit stayhousedla.org. Stay Housed LA, keeping Los Angeles residents in their homes. Stay Housed LA, your rights, your home, our community. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Is your loved one at the hospital or in a nursing home? Have they developed bed sores, fallen, or worse? These are things your family members should be protected from. Bed sores, falls, and dehydration are almost always the result of negligent care. If this has happened to your loved one, call Zoran at Basic Law Group at 800-215-1234 or visit basiclawgroup.com. The consultation is free, and if they don't win, you don't pay. That's 800-215-1234.
We're not for everybody, but we're for everybody. You're listening to KBLA Talk 1580.
Welcome to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. Our very special guest on Fat Meat Fridays is none other than Gina Counts, creator of the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show, along with Dr. S. Todd Yeary. And yes, Mark Hill, we are really live on Fridays. We are the only live show on KBLA on Fridays. So thank you for your query. And we're glad to give you a shout out to confirm that we are present. Gina, are we present on Fridays or what?
We are present, and we invite you to like, follow, and subscribe to KBLA and the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Dr. Yeary? Are we live, Dr. Yeary? You're driving somewhere. You better be alive.
Listen, if we weren't live, nobody schedules to have me as a guest on Friday sitting in traffic going through the tunnel. This is not by accident.
Dr. Yeary, we had a really interesting conversation with Dr. Ron Daniels, who laid out an amazing outline of the importance of the Congressional Black Caucus this year, but he also acknowledged that there were some fairly significant problems and concerns given his decades-long career of observation, activism, engagement, and even having run as a presidential candidate in the state of California himself. He made some observations about the Congressional Black Caucus that I think were some of the observations that you shared as well, that just maybe the fierce urgency of now was understood by some members, but by other members, it might have just been business as usual. Dr. Yeary?
Yeah, I think it comes down to when you come to institutional service, but you come without historical memory, you then become part of the status quo. As you were even framing it, I'm thinking about the anticipation of crossing the Jordan and how each tribe was to take a stone with them over to the other side and rest there on the first night. That you can't claim deliverance and forget where you came from. Otherwise, you just embraced a new kind of bondage. And so when we look at the Congressional Black Caucus and its service, if we have members coming that are not aware of history, whether it's folk history in terms of what got passed down in families, the official history that gets passed down through the ages, or as you and I have talked about, how the congressional record is probably the most historically relevant document to know what the debates have been over time, then what you basically have is you have members of a caucus whose membership is in blackface only.
Wow.
So is that to say that you need people to come who are awake, or to coin a better term that they wanted to get rid of, woke?
Well, I think they need to take a history test because the way they pulling books off the shelves, which books have you been reading? Because if you are reading the history as it's outlined in the 1776 project, but you forget the 1619 project, then we have to be suspect with your analysis and your ability to be critically aware of the hustle when it comes down. And if you've just totally abandoned, you've become so sophisticated that you've forgotten your street sensibilities, then what you've become is a provocateur of someone else's agenda, which means you cannot be trusted. And therefore, we have to figure out by way of process how to get someone in that represents our interests.
I think that's absolutely right. Now, the way I have framed it came from this show with Dr. Johnny Mack on his World House work, his World House project, and his vision. Dr. Mack said that all of us are in time, but we are in time, watch this right here, over time. From the history of our people, it places us in this moment. And we're either going to be right on time, we're going to envision another time while we're in time, we're going to work towards something that's going somewhere, or to Kamala Harris's point, in time, you may come in bright, articulate, scholastically sound, politically correct, but you're almost, Todd, of no use whatsoever to the Negro struggle, which requires an understanding of history over time. And to that extent, Gina, when Todd Yeary says we got to test some of these Negroes with a history test, because I mean they're great in the present, but they may not be in time on the questions from 1619 to the present that makes the present and makes us worthy of what God has for us to do in the present. Gina?
I absolutely get it. It one term that we haven't heard too much about is critical race theory since all of this started happening. And in that framework of let's get rid of everything that has to do with talking about the history of the United States. I totally agree. I mean, and perhaps what should happen is when you get to Congress, there is a historian there who can give you a history lesson so that you are all operating on the same page so that you understand and you can't be coerced, bought out, intimidated about doing what's right by the people who elected you to be there.
Dr. Uri, we have about 3 minutes before the top of the hour.
That was a hint towards you,
Yeah,
historian.
Doc.
You were the historian in Congress.
I appreciate that, Gina. That's so kind of you. Dr. Uri, we need a word of hope.
Hey, here we go. On Fatback Friday, because I like the hard part of the meat. I can carry it with me. It lingers a little while. It gives me some flavor. In the book of Joshua, chapter 1, about verse 11, there's a commandment. Joshua says to the people, the King James Version says, prepare ye victuals. The translation is prepare provisions. Because in 3 days, you're going to move into the process of liberation. And what I thought about was whenever my mother would take us to go see my grandmother, we've been talking about taking care of our elderly members of family. We would get on the Trailways bus, leave Augusta, Georgia. And the day before, my mother would go in the kitchen, fry chicken, and she would have it ready. And some folks had Wonder Bread. We wonder if it's bread.
Doc, we got about 45 seconds. We got to get there.
I'm going to get there. We're going to shout in a minute. And she would put it in aluminum foil, but she was prepared for the journey because she knew we were going somewhere. We talk about where we're going, but we don't get ready to go where we want to be. And all I'm saying is y'all get ready because we about to bust a move and we about to make progress and we're going to honor the ancestor sacrifice. So get I wonder if it's bread and your chicken ready because we got work to do.
Appreciate you, Dr. Uri. Gina, thank you for a wonderful show and a wonderful week.
Thank you, Jesse.
Todd, thank you for your time and for what you give us. So rich every Wednesday and every time that you're with us.
Thanks,
My
Dr.
blessing to you.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Mark Hill. We are live. We're the only live show on KBLA on Talk. KBLA Talk 1580. So many blessings, especially for Tavis while he's traveling throughout the world right now. And we're so grateful for this opportunity in this show. We'll see you guys next week when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.